Far in the cold northern waters of Scotland, hidden under layers of mist and buried secrets, lies an island called Ravenmoor. To most people, it doesn't exist. Maps don't name it. Ships avoid its path. And locals, they only speak of it in whispers, if at all. It's cursed, they say. A place where the dead never rest, and the living don't return. But this isn't a myth. This is the story of a man who went to Ravenmoor and came back. Changed. His name was Ewan MacLeod, a 24-year-old fisherman from the quiet coastal village of Darsk. He was young, determined, and full of ambition. After the death of his father, Ewan had become the sole provider for his family. With few resources and fewer opportunities, he bought a small fishing boat using borrowed money and set out to build his life at sea. From the first day, the older fisherman warned him, "Stick to the southern waters. Don't go north. And never, ever, sail past the fog." Ewan didn't understand why. He'd laugh it off. "What's a bit of fog?" he'd ask. Fish don't care about ghost stories. But the warnings were real. Especially about Ravenmoor. Ewan first heard the name from an old man at the harbor, who said it under his breath like a curse. That island, it listens. It remembers. One morning, frustrated by a week of bad catch and empty nets, Ewan overheard rumors that the waters near Ravenmoor were full of fish, untouched for decades. Others were too scared to go, but he saw opportunity. A gold mine waiting beyond the fear. That very next day, before sunrise, he set sail north. The sea was calm, unnaturally calm. As if it were holding its breath. The deeper he went, the thicker the fog became. The world around him faded, no birds, no sun, no sound. Just water and whiteness. Then, out of the mist, Ravenmoor appeared. It was a lifeless, gray landmass. No trees, no animals, just jagged rocks and broken structures half swallowed by time. Ewan had no plans to step on the island, just fish nearby and leave. But fate had other plans. The wind shifted. Waves slammed against his boat. A sudden storm rose out of nowhere. Ewan struggled to steer, but the sea wouldn't let him. A monstrous wave struck, throwing him into the water. He hit something hard, and everything went black. He woke up on the shore of the island. His boat was in pieces. No radio. No help. The ocean stretched endlessly behind him. That's when he heard it. A bell. Ringing slowly. Softly. Calling. Ewan followed the sound, his curiosity overtaking his fear. The bell seemed to come from the center of the island. As he climbed over broken paths and dead silence, he saw a towering building rising from the fog. An old structure with faded letters above the arch. Ravenmoor Asylum for the Mentally Ill, EST 1886. The door creaked open by itself. Ewan stepped inside. That's when everything changed. The crumbling walls transformed into clean, white corridors. Lights flickered on. He heard footsteps. Voices. Nurses pushing wheelchairs. Patients whispering to themselves. Ewan thought he was hallucinating. A man in a white coat approached him. Tall, pale, with dark eyes and a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Aldrich," he said. "You're hurt. Come with me. I'll take care of you." Ewan looked down and saw blood dripping from his hands, cuts he hadn't noticed before. He followed the doctor, unsettled but too disoriented to resist. The asylum was fully functional, eerily so. Patients sat quietly, but each of them stared at Ewan like they recognized him. Whispers filled the air. The doctor led him to a room filled with strange equipment, old-fashioned and rusted around the edges. "You'll feel better after this," Dr. Aldrich said. But just as the doctor reached for his instruments, Ewan's vision shifted again. The walls began to crack. Lights went dark. The smell of rot filled the air. The patients in the hallway were gone, replaced by corpses strapped to beds. The doctor, now pale, blood-soaked, and grinning with dead eyes. Ewan jumped up and ran. The hallways had changed. Now twisted and dark. Doors led to nowhere. Others opened into rooms filled with horror, surgical chairs with restraints, jars of body parts, blood-stained notebooks filled with madness. He heard footsteps behind him. Not running. Just calmly following. He opened a door and found a massive room filled with skeletons. Some still wearing hospital gowns. All of them facing the same direction, as if they'd died looking at something, or someone. Ewan screamed. Then he heard the voice. "You can't leave. You came for treatment, and I treat all my patients." Dr. Aldrich was behind him again. His face melted, half missing. His hands were covered in the blood of 100 years. He moved slowly, methodically. Like he had all the time in the world. Ewan fled through a hallway that seemed to stretch forever. Shadows moved along the walls. The bell rang louder and louder, echoing through his skull. Finally, he crashed through a side door and burst outside. Fog covered the island, but through it, he saw a boat approaching. 2 fishermen pulled him in. He collapsed, shaking, breathless. As they sailed away, Ewan looked back at the island. It was fading into the mist, as if it was never there. But the bell, it kept ringing. He asked the fishermen, "Do you hear that bell?" They looked at each other, then back at him. "There's no bell, lad. Hasn't been for over a century." Ewan returned home. He never spoke of it again. But every night, as he lies in bed, he hears it. Ding, ding, ding. They say he walks in his sleep. That sometimes he stares at the sea for hours. And one day, they say, he'll answer the bell again. Because once Ravenmore claims you, it never truly lets you go.